And yeah, as she said, I'm Sam. I'm Keela's marketing director. So I just want to start by acknowledging that here in Vancouver, we are on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of the Coast Salish people, the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh First Nations, and give thanks for their generosity and hospitality on these lands and waters. So Keela is a nonprofit specific technology company, and like many of you, we've been fully remote for the last year and a bit. Communicating with your colleagues, your board, or your donors has always been a friction point, but now communicating remotely poses its own set of challenges. When I first started at Keela, one of my onboarding requirements was to take a communication style assessment. Turns out I'm a socializer, and I assume at least a few of you here are today as well. So while it was great knowing my communication style, what our COO Tazzy taught me was that effective teamwork comes from understanding the style of others on my team and learning how different styles lend to different strengths and different blind spots. Knowing both my style and the styles of my colleagues has helped us work more effectively and cohesively. We've teamed up with Imagine Canada and Charity Village to bring you this communication style workshop. And I'll pass it over to your facilitator today. Tazzy spent 15 years building startups and has been running these workshops for many years now. Her communication style is director, and you'll soon see how both myself as a socializer and Tazzy as a director can better communicate with each other. Tazzy?
Thanks, Sam. Hello. All right, welcome everybody. I will start by going through a bit about the structure of this workshop so you know what to expect. I'm going to start by teaching you the tool. I'm going to go through each of the styles in turn and go into detail, and you'll learn more about your style and those styles of the colleagues you work with every day. Next, we're going to do a breakout exercise, and that's a bit challenging because we have so many participants today, but we're going to try our best using the notes section. So, okay, we'll see how we can figure this out. But we've got a few options for the breakout. We're gonna hope it works with this many people. So next, we're going to identify someone's dominant communication style, and this is if you don't know their style. So this is important because while you might know the people on your team, you're not going to know everyone's style, and you can use this throughout your life with anyone and everyone you meet. So we're going to show you how to predict someone's style by some key tips and tricks. And then next, how to manage your blind spots. Now, this is the most important section of this workshop, if you ask me. So if you have a takeaway, make the blind spots your big takeaway today. And then finally, we're going to do a scenario and brainstorm at the very end, and hopefully we can work with the tech to have a bit of interaction. We'll see if that works. So with that, let's dive right in. So, are you a good communicator? That's a big question, and it can actually be one of the single biggest factors in your success or failure in work, in life maybe. So, I used to think I was a good communicator. I was clear, I said what I meant, I was confident in my approach, and I had assumed that that's what it took to be a good communicator. But after learning these styles, the communication styles we're going to learn today, I realized that my way of communicating is just one approach, one style. And while it can be really effective in certain situations, it also has its drawbacks, and it doesn't work for everyone. So this simple symbol is the basis of this communication style framework. It's a matrix. So you have two axes, the vertical and the horizontal, and where you fall on each of these axes is what determines your communication style. So I want to say something important because, of course, this is not a perfect science, and these are generalizations. And the reality is people are far too complex to simply put them in a bucket and call it a day. So you might be one way at work, and you actually might be entirely different with friends and family, and that's okay. It does not make this framework any less valuable to you, because the purpose of learning these four styles is to develop empathy. And this is empathy for others who may be different than us. It's from this empathy that we can develop a newfound respect for someone else's strengths that, believe it or not, we may have previously seen as a frustrating difference. And I'll give you an example. So for those of you who speak quickly, I can tell you that collaborating with someone who has a far slower way of speaking may feel frustrating. But when you learn why and how their slower cadence is actually a strength that you as a fast talker could really benefit from in certain situations, you begin to view their slower pace differently. So you might ask yourself, what might they be considering that I have entirely overlooked as I race through things? What have they found that takes them longer to process this concept that I've missed? So when you start to view differences in communication through this new lens, this new light, you develop a stronger camaraderie as a team. And as a team, you become far more effective. So that's the why behind all of this. Let's dig in a little more to the how. We're going to look at each axis in turn. So on the vertical axis, we have faster and direct at the top and slower and indirect at the bottom. Okay, faster versus slower. That's pretty simple, right? It refers to the speed at which someone makes decisions, analyzes problems, talks, even walks sometimes. Now, direct versus indirect looks at what someone values more. Okay, we have clarity of the message on one end, the direct end of the spectrum. And then on the other side, we have being polite and considerate of other people's feelings. Now, remember, this is a spectrum, right? So few people want to hurt or insult others, but there's plenty of individuals who actually find direct communication unpleasant, and they'd rather take an indirect approach to delivering most of their messages. Next, we have our horizontal axis. So we have guarded and task-focused on one end, and open and people-focused on the other. So what does that mean? What does that look like? Guarded versus open. So this is simply the level to which someone openly shares their thoughts, their feelings, their wants, their ideas. Then we have task versus people-focused. So someone who's task-focused considers the actions required to complete something. Someone who's people-focused considers the people involved to complete that same thing. So it really shows you what lens you're looking through when you consider a problem or a task at hand. Now, it's interesting that these two elements work together because being truly people-focused requires a level of openness to really connect and relate to others. Now, what I want to convey today is that every style has its strengths or its benefits, and as is always the case with strengths come blind spots. So we'll come back to this idea, but I don't call them weaknesses, I call them blind spots, and that's important. You're not trying to fix these, you're just trying to become aware of them. As we describe each style, I don't want you to worry if you don't relate to every single element of your style. These are generalizations. You can still learn a lot from understanding other styles, and most importantly, be open to learning about your potential blind spots because you have them. It's just a question of where they are and being aware of them. So the key to this workshop, if I had to pick one thing, is finding your blind spots. So be open to that. Now let's take a look at each style. I'm hoping everyone here has taken the assessment and already knows which style they are. If you haven't for any reason, that's okay. You can take it after and you can check in and see if you relate to the styles examples. So in the top left, we have director. Top right, we have socializer. Both are fast, but a little different on how they view problems. Then we have thinkers in the bottom left and relators in the bottom right. Both are a little slower and more indirect, and again, different in the way they view a problem. So what does this mean? We're going to look at each in turn in detail. We'll start with the directors. So we understand the axes, right? Directors are in the top left. They tend to be faster and direct and guarded and task focused. What does that look like in a work environment? Directors are the fast-paced, hard-charging leaders that focus on results above everything else. They stick to business. They like to get things done. Now, directors might not feel that they have as much time to discuss your weekend or build rapport as much as some of the other styles might want them to. The director assumes that being decisive is always leading to the best outcome. So they make their decisions quickly and then they move on. They tend to get started on tasks immediately, and they often feel impatient, especially in meetings. They might intimidate others with this style of communication. But believe it or not, the director doesn't even realize that, or rarely do they realize it, because for a director, it's just the right way to communicate. Direct and clear is always the best way. Now, although a director feels that people are important, they generally don't feel people are as important as the task at hand and the intended results. So how do you identify a director? You walk into a room, it's a new team, and you want to be aware of different styles so you can, show up in the best way. So what is a director like? Well, they're fast talking and they're bold and confident. They tell more than they ask, and this one's important. Think about people asking lots of questions versus telling you everything they want. Directors will tell you. They'll also interrupt you. They're not always the best listeners, and they can be quite abrupt. They get right to the point, they stay on task, and they're focused, but they can multitask when they're impatient. So keep this in mind, because they're often impatient. But you give a director a challenge, and they will gladly accept. Okay, here's the first little exercise I'd like everyone to do. Think about who's on your team. I want you to think about people in your life, in your community. It could be family and friends. It doesn't matter, anyone. Who do you think might be a director based on what I've just described? Make a note beside. I want you to put a little note down on your piece of paper. We're going to do this for each style, and then we're going to come back to it. You're going to look at who in your life you think might be in each of the different categories. Thinkers. Let's talk about thinkers. Okay, they're in the bottom left quadrant. And like the director, they're guarded and task focused, right? But unlike the director, they're a bit slower. They're more indirect when they communicate. So what does that look like? Thinkers are the detail-oriented leaders. And they focus on what it takes to get the job done right. The communication style of the thinker tends to be less assertive than the other styles. Like directors, thinkers are also task-oriented. So they assume that there's a best way to do things and that it's their job to make sure that no mistakes are made. Thinkers often feel rewarded when a problem is solved. They value a work environment where they can solve complex problems and get things done right. Quality is important to a thinker. So how do they show up? How does a thinker show up? Well, thinkers tend to be more formal. They tend to have less vocal variety. They're very focused, and they tend to consider facts more than ideas. Sometimes they avoid sharing their feelings because, remember, they're not on the open side of the spectrum. They're on the guarded side. So they might actually avoid eye contact, but they listen really well. And it's interesting, when you're speaking to a thinker, sometimes they can refrain from giving you compliments or reassurance. They can sit quite blankly and just listen because they're absorbing every little detail. So sometimes it might feel to you as the speaker that they're unenthused, when they might really love your idea and think it's spectacular. So thinkers tend to be slower paced and quieter than other styles, and there's less hand and body gestures. Now, if you have a tough problem, something complex that it really matters that you get right, give it to a thinker. Ask them for help, because the quality of their solution is going to be off the charts. Now, let's take that moment again and write down any notes on who in your life might be a thinker. Next up, we have the socializers. Socializers are in the top right quadrant of the matrix. This means they are fast and direct like the director. But unlike the director, they are more open and people-focused. So socializers, they focus on leading through their creative ideas. They're visionary. Socializers' style of communication is assertive and people-oriented. They're fun and energetic and engaging, and at times they can be a little dramatic. They can really inspire others. They believe that people should feel free to voice their opinion, to think outside the box, and to articulate what they feel. And they truly enjoy entertaining. They tend to be expressive, outgoing, and self-assured. So, how do you identify one? Well, socializers tend to talk a lot. They have great vocal variety, and they can be quite animated. They tell stories, often personal ones, because they're quite open. And they like to share their feelings and their opinions. They can be loud and dramatic and fast speaking, and they have lots of hand and body movements. They're quite spontaneous. Any socializers in your life? So make some notes. Remember, we're going to come back to this list. I want you to think about who's on your team at work. I want you to think about who's in your family that you work with, that you encounter every day. Who do you think might be a socializer? Okay, last one, we have relators. Now, relators are in the bottom right quadrant. So first and foremost, they're open and people focused. They also tend to be slower and indirect in the way they communicate. This is similar to the thinkers. Relators lead by supporting others. Their style of communication is far less assertive than directors or socializers. But similar to the socializers, the relators are really focused on the people that are involved. Relators tend to look after the needs of the team and other people's welfare, sometimes and often above their own. There's a feeling of accomplishment when the team does well, and they view personal relationships as extremely important in their lives. They are great team players and great collaborators. So let's look at identifying a relator. Okay, so remember I said the directors tell? The relators ask. They ask a lot of questions. They listen to understand. If you have ever really felt like you've been heard, like someone's nodding and smiling while you talk, it's a good chance they're a relator. They're very encouraging, and they're lovely to talk to for that reason. They tend to also reserve their opinions. They're warm and less forceful, and they're quieter and have slower speech, similar to the thinkers. Again, intermittent eye contact is often a sign of a relator. They tend to be gentle with their handshake and more patient in their approach. Take your minute. Any relators on your team and in your life? Make some notes. Okay, so this is when we want to do the breakout session, and I'm hoping I'll be able to see some notes in the chat box. Not sure if we will, but let's give it a go, okay? We'll see if someone can read this out for me. It looks like we might be able to. And if not, some notes already, but activity that I'd like to participate in. Initially, breakout room of because we can't do that, think about how you this question. Communicate with me effectively, do and do not, or don't. We're going to make a list, okay? So here's an example. In order to communicate with me effectively, and of course I don't mean me, I mean you, do tell me why, and don't rush. I would love everyone could make notes on their own. Take a minute. I'm actually just quietly for a minute some notes because this is important. This understand your manifests for you. In order to communicate, do and make some notes.
Tazzy, I'm going to jump in there just for a
quietly
second. You're breaking up a little bit. I'm not sure if we've got just a bit of a bad connection there. So folks, I appreciate your patience as we just kind of see if that works itself out. Yeah, Tazzy, we can't hear you, so I'm wondering if perhaps it's on your end. I'm not sure. Okay, folks, it looks like we might be having a go-to issue. And folks, do you want to give Tazzy's exercise a try while we're just waiting to see if the audio works itself out? So that's just typing in the chat box of the tell me sorry, Tazzy. I'm reading the chat box here and trying to recall your question.
Yeah, I'll clarify. No worries. Don't actually type anything. I'd love it if people made some notes just on their own. Do and don't. It's really important actually that you don't type anything yet, because we're going to be asking each style in turn. That's different. So some notes on a pad of paper in order to communicate with me effectively, you and all the things you want to do for you, and the example. Tell me why, and you're okay.
Yeah, we're still having some cutting out, Tazzy, and it seems to be primarily when you're speaking. So just kind of see here if it might be best. Are you? Yeah. So I'm just trying to see. Are you connected with your AirPods? Because that could be an issue. Otherwise, we might need to see about getting you to try calling in. Do you want to try testing now? See how it is. Seems could be a go-to issue. Okay. All right, folks. We haven't had this trouble in a long time where we've had this much audio problem. So again, I appreciate your patience while we sort this through. In a worst case scenario, we will do a recording of this and get it to you. But if you can just hold on a little bit longer, we'll see if we can get this going. Okay, Tazzy, why don't we try testing one more time?
Okay. Can you hear me all right now?
So far, so good.
Did you hear that at all? Yeah? Okay.
Oh, and
Now, I
Tazzy,
guess the question is, do you want me to re-explain the exercise? Yeah?
I'm going to ask, maybe turn off your webcam. Let's give that
Yeah.
a try and see if that helps.
Sure.
All right.
Is that any better?
That might be better. Let's give it a shot and I'll jump in if we
That works.
if
I
we need
am
pause.
hard, like plugged into my internet. Okay. Okay. I guess my question is, do you want me to explain the exercise, or did that come through okay? Could you hear me when I explained the first time?
Yeah, if you don't mind explaining it one more time, I think that would be great for everyone.
Sure. Yeah, you're cutting in and out as well. So hopefully everyone can hear me. I am hard plugged into the actual router, so I'm hoping. I'm not sure. Okay. So the exercise for anyone who couldn't understand is to make some notes about how you want to be communicated with. So answer the question, in order to communicate with me effectively, do and don't. And the example I gave was, do tell me why, and don't rush me. And please do not write anything in the chat box. I'd like you to make these notes on your own, but be ready to share when I ask for your styles, do's and don'ts. So we're going to ask for them in turn. So is that clear? Did that work okay?
Perfect. Thank you, Tazzy.
All right. Wonderful. So I'm hoping everyone's had a few minutes to do that while we troubleshoot the tech issues. So let's carry on. If you're anything like me, I did this exercise when I first learned about these styles. And if you're anything like me, I had assumed that every group was going to have the same list. And so I want to see what you all came up with. Now, hopefully this works and someone can read out the chat box. If I can't see it, I'm not sure. If not, I have notes. So either way, it should be fine, but let's give it a try. Can we start and see what the directors came up with? So if you are a director, you've taken the assessment and you know you're a director, I'd love it if you could write in the chat box some do's for what you want people to do to communicate with you directly, or some don'ts. Just make sure you let us know if it's a do or don't when you make your notes. Now, am I going to be able to see that, or is that something that Marina, you can read out to me? Or
Tazzy, I can read some of those out. So
wonderful.
we've got do, get to the point, give me clear
Yes.
direction, be
Yes.
honest. Oh, wow, we have a lot of directors on the call because they're just flooding the chat box right now, which is
Wonderful.
fantastic.
Just read them out.
All right.
Read them all out.
Summarize for me, high-level details, give me clear deadlines, outline expectation, timings, and goals. Get to the point and set expectations early. Be blunt. Don't tell me a long story. Be concise. Don't tell me a lot of extra narrative. Be forward and respectful. Give me the information I need to make the decision.
These are amazing, by the way. Very director. Can I have some don'ts? What do directors not want you to do? Let's do a couple more don'ts.
Yeah, don't make excuses. Don't be too verbose. All right, don't waste my time. Don't beat around the bush. Don't ask me about my social life.
Wow, interesting. Okay, we've got a lot of directors on this call, and that was so on point. So thank you. That's enough for the examples. And I want to show you something interesting. I've done this workshop a lot, and I actually wrote down what I have come to see as very normal for directors. And I just wanted you to see how similar that was to what you all came up with. And initially I thought that was a big risk, just in case people didn't come up with, you know, a similar answer, and doing this again and again, every time they are bang on. So as you can see, everything, pretty much everything that you all said a director wants us to do or not do was summarized on this list in some way. So wonderful, thank you. We're going to do this for each style. So next up, we have the socializers. So get ready, socializers, with your do's and your don'ts. And if we can do that again, that worked really well. Go ahead and put some in the chat.
Awesome. So we've got do, allow me time to process. Tell me what you want. Tell me why. Listen. Give me context. Give me all the facts. Ask me how I'm doing. Give time for brainstorming. A few give time for brainstorming, ideas, and discussion.
Mm-hmm.
Give me scenarios from life experience. Let me ask questions. Pay attention to the feeling.
Wonderful, yeah.
Don't dominate the conversation. I'm going to try to find a few more don'ts here, Tazzy. Don't interrupt me. Don't be rude.
All right, well, that's great. If there's any more, let me know, just yell them out. But I think what you'll find is a lot of them are very similar to what I've got in my notes. And the interesting thing is I thought I heard in your examples a lot more emotion words, a lot more about feeling and about ideas than I did with the directors. And that is exactly in line with a socializer's style, right? They tend to be more open and more people focused. So that was great. Let's move to the thinkers. All right, thinkers, can you add some do's and don'ts?
All right, thinkers, be patient with my questions and be specific with instructions. Give me time to ponder. We have a lot about questions here, Tazzy. a lot of folks asking for time for questions. Don't put me on the spot. Make a list before coming to me. Be methodical. Tell me what it is that you want. Explain. Give me a timeline. Don't rush me or put me on the spot.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Yeah, don't be abstract.
Mm-hmm.
Don't forget the
Another
meeting
big one.
agenda and the goal of the meeting. That's a good one.
Mhm. Stay on track, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't monopolize. Don't rush me, be patient. Be
Perfect.
clear, be concise, and listen. Don't show too much emotion. Don't expect an
Interesting.
immediate response.
Okay, that one right there. Don't expect an immediate response. If I had to sum up the thinkers, that is a brilliant one. I might even add it to my notes. A big part of the thinkers' do's and don'ts were around time. And I think what has happened is directors and socializers tend to rush thinkers. And thinkers are very sensitive to it because it's frustrating for them. They have a lot to process. So don't rush us, don't interrupt us, don't pressure us. That's a big thing I hear a lot with thinkers. And it's because they have a lot more to consider. And we're going to talk about that in a second. So you better understand how a thinker's mind is working, because it's very valuable if you give them the space they need. That was wonderful. Finally, let's look at the relators, do's and don'ts. Go ahead.
Okay, relators. Make eye contact. Pay attention and be supportive and not dismissive. Explain things to me clearly and slowly. Be supportive of others. Be honest. Be patient. Don't be rude. Listen and please don't interrupt. Ask me how I'm doing. Allow time for brainstorming and offer encouragement. Be patient. Don't stay silent. Tell me why you need something. Tell me your needs with details. Be authentic. Be a team player. Be flexible if possible, and don't be dismissive or demeaning. Don't be harsh or condescending. Avoid conflict. Don't cut me
These are
off
really,
or embarrass me.
yeah, these are really good. And you can hear all of the heart. You can hear the importance of feeling and emotion. I heard one of them was ask how I'm doing. And that's important to relators. In the same way a director gets frustrated by too much chit chat about how you're doing, a relator needs that. They want to know that you care about them. So we're going to talk a bit about how to work better with other styles, and that's a big one. The other one is give them time. Don't throw things at them and make a last minute meeting without any time to prepare. Relators need a bit of time. They don't want to be pushed. And the big thing is don't be rude. I hear that from every relator I ever speak to. I have rarely heard a director say don't be rude. And I'm comparing the two of them because they tend to be very different on two sides of the spectrum. But if they can work together, they really help each other out, as do thinkers and socializers. So we'll talk about that in a second. But I hope that was eye-opening for everybody to really understand how differently we each, as a different style, want to be communicated with. And of course, the way we want to be communicated with is the way we communicate with others. So a well-intentioned approach might actually frustrate someone else. And it can be completely unnecessary frustration when we have the empathy to see why it's happening. So now you can see how these different styles are and how frustrating it can be when your approach is not getting the right response from a different style because they don't understand where you're coming from. So we're going to look at exactly how to work well with others. What I did here was I took a relator's don'ts and a director's do's and I put them side by side. And it's really easy to see that, the director wants deadlines, wants to multitask, wants to be quick and direct and to the point. And the relator doesn't want you to multitask while they're talking because it's rude. They don't want to be rushed. They don't want you to put pressure on them. So we come with two styles into the same conversation and both have amazing strengths. I can tell you that conflict and frustration is the outcome. And it can be really unfortunate because once you see why, and we're going to touch on that, it's a very valuable bit of conflict if you can appreciate it and use it in a healthy way. Socializers want you to be honest and open. I heard one of the thinkers actually say, don't make it personal. Here again, it's unintentional conflict, unintentional friction. The socializers want time to chat, to brainstorm, to collaborate. The thinkers actually want to stay on track, on point, and on task. The socializers might want something high level and summarized so they can get the big picture, whereas the thinker wants it not to be vague. They want details and facts. So my slides have not changed. There we go. So let's look at strengths, because this is when it all comes to light. Directors make fast decisions when that's what's needed. They take the lead when others hesitate. They get things done and they take action. Relators include others and make the team feel respected and appreciated. Relators are aware of unhappy team members long before it's too late to help them, and they can foresee these problems better before they occur, and better than any of the other styles. Socializers inspire others to get involved, to connect to a mission or a goal. They can sell a vision and they keep things fun and the energy high. Thinkers solve complex problems with quality solutions. They find the right answer, not just any answer, and they can work at a problem for hours or days without getting bored. So as we go through each style's blind spots, I want you all to remember something really important. Your strengths in one area are what create these blind spots in another area. It's not possible to be incredibly task focused and efficient and then be equally people focused. It's just not. So don't even try. Don't try to fix your blind spots, or you'll mute your strengths. And that makes you less valuable and honestly less authentic. So how do we work together? So what I want to suggest is that you learn how to work with and trust others on your team who have their strengths in the areas of your blind spots. So what does that look like? Let's talk about these blind spots first so you can really understand where they tend to show up. Directors can ignore and undervalue feelings. They can miss signs or indirect communication altogether. They assume others are being direct because they're being direct. They can get so wrapped up in being busy that they actually lose sight of their purpose. And they get impatient working with others. They make decisions before having enough time and enough information. So a director makes his decisions too fast, while maybe a thinker or a relator makes them a little too slow. Think about how they can help each other. Socializers' blind spots. Okay, socializers can miss details. Oh, it hasn't changed, has it? There you go. They can miss details. They can miss deadlines, getting wrapped up telling a story or chat. They can start things they don't finish, and they can pull meetings entirely off track. Now, they can also distract others because they're having a conversation and they're keeping it light and fun, which is awesome, but distracting and can be frustrating for other people. Thinkers. So thinkers can become stuck over analyzing. They can feel they never have enough information to make the decision. They convey little enthusiasm for others' ideas, even if they really like the idea. And they can actually be risk adverse when risks are what are needed. Relators can frustrate others with their need to consider feelings and can take too long to take action. They can become overwhelmed trying to avoid conflict at all costs. And they can hesitate when action is really what's needed. So for this slide, I want to show you how different styles, very, very high level and loosely, can help other styles, okay? So here we have all 4 styles, right? And you understand their blind spots and their strengths. So how might a thinker or a relator help a director or a socializer? And you're welcome to write it in the chat, but I'm just going to push through and say the answers. So how does a thinker and a relator help a director or socializer? So let's look at this. They can help slow them down and help them think through things more carefully, where they might move too quickly and miss things in the details. Now, let's look at how a director or a socializer helps a thinker and a relator, how they could help. They could help them make faster decisions and push them to get things done and to know when they have enough information for the decision at hand. Socializers and relators, how can they help directors and thinkers? Well, they can help them be more people focused, right? Understand the value of emotion and take the time and make the time to consider the people involved. And the last one, how can a director and a thinker help a socializer and a relator? Well, they can help them stay on task, get things done, move things through their checklist, and move initiatives forward. So these are pretty high and pretty general, but as you become more and more experienced in these differences of styles, you're going to practice awareness of these strengths and blind spots. You're actually going to start to see strengths in others that you didn't see before. You're going to start to understand how to use them most effectively. And what's more, you're going to understand when to step up and when to let others shine. And that's really the key here. So now you understand your strengths and blind spots, but how can you work best with others, especially if they don't understand these same things? So the answer is you try to meet them halfway. I'm not asking you to change who you are. I'm asking you to meet them halfway. So the goal of working with others is not to ever be inauthentic, but with this empathy, you can actually start to add little elements to how you do things and maybe pull back a little on things where you know might frustrate them because of their style. You should have a list of people on your team. Remember at the beginning, I asked you to make some notes. So you might have some suspected styles in your life, and I want you to consider what each style wants from you when you communicate with them. And if you work to do a little more of these, meet them halfway in your day-to-day interactions, you're actually going to start to see your relationship shine and your team's productivity is going to skyrocket. You're meeting with a director, just be a little faster, come with a solution in mind and present your solution. Don't wait to be asked, just present it. They want you to. Stay focused and be as efficient as you can. Most importantly, if you're talking to a director, support their goals. That will really endear you to them. For thinkers, they want you to be thorough, use logic and reason. And the biggest thing I found with thinkers is try not to change a plan quickly. They've put a lot of time and effort into considering every option. If you have to change the plan, respect that that's a big deal and that causes a lot of upheaval to them. So just be respectful of the process and their time to think that went into that. Most of all, support their thoughts. For relators, ask them their ideas and opinions. They might not always share openly, so ask them. And then actually take the time to listen. Don't rush them when they do start talking. And make time to care about them or to inquire about them as a person. That's really important. Most of all, support their feelings. Socializers want to be motivated, entertained, and try not to bore them. Drives them crazy. If you can tell them a story, they'd probably love it. And keep it fun and moving. Now, if a socializer shares an idea, let's say you're a thinker or a relator and you're a bit more reserved, actually really show them how much you like it. Take the time to really be a little more expressive to show that you support their ideas. It's important to them. So we're coming towards the end, and I'm hoping we'll have a couple minutes for questions. But before we do, I want to go through a scenario with you. Of course, did I leave socializers at thinkers? I apologize. Oh, no, we're good. Okay, I just didn't show you this last one for some reason. Okay, so I'm going to read through this scenario, and I want you to think about what style Kyle is and what style Paul is. And then I want you to consider how each of them are feeling after the simple interaction. Okay, are you ready? Kyle walks in and says, "Hey, Paul, how was your weekend?" Paul says, "Good, Kyle, what's up?" Kyle says, "So I wanted to run something by you. Do you think we could schedule a time to chat?" Paul says, "Sure, now works. What's up?" So they move over to a meeting room and sit down. Kyle says, "So hey, how did your son do in that baseball game?" Paul says, "Good. What did you want to discuss?" So now Kyle is visibly flustered and he says, okay, yeah. So I just wanted to suggest that maybe we go a different direction with the way we approach this new client, this new donor. I really feel they're going to want more information before we ask them to commit to the project the way it is. I'm concerned that we might actually lose them if we push them too soon. Paul's response, I don't think so. It can't hurt just to ask them, right? Is that it? Kyle says, "Yes, Thank you for your time. So this is a really simple interaction. These things happen every day, many times a day in the office environment or in your working environment. So can someone put in the note section, who do you think Kyle is? What kind of communication style? And what kind of style might Paul be? If anyone wants to yell it out, feel free. If not, I'm just going to go ahead and tell you guys.
We're getting, yeah, Paul is director and Kyle is a relator. That's what I'm seeing most often in the chat, Tazzy.
Yes, fantastic. Okay, you got it right. So relator Kyle is feeling rushed. He's feeling frustrated that Paul didn't listen, and he's unsure how to get through to Paul. He feels unsupported, and trust and rapport between the two of them was really weakened in that interaction. Now, director Paul is feeling irritated. He's slightly annoyed that Kyle wasted his time. He wishes that Kyle had just told him directly, sitting at his desk when he first approached him. And he's already thinking about something else. He's moved on. But subconsciously, Paul might hesitate to bring things to Kyle in the future because he might fear that he's going to take too long on what he considers irrelevant things. Now, what do you think happens in this scenario with the client? What do you think is the outcome? They lose the client. So Kyle is a relator, right? He saw these nuances in the behavior of the client and he was able to ascertain how they felt. This is a blind spot for Paul. But instead of leaning on Kyle to help with this blind spot, Paul is probably going to avoid working with him in the future because he finds him frustrating. Isn't that unfortunate? They could work together so well and yet they avoid each other because of that subtle friction. Now, Kyle as a relator does not push for his feelings to be validated, so the plan goes ahead as is, and they lose the client. So how could this have been done differently? Let's look at an alternative scenario. Paul recognizes that Kyle's a relator, and he may be able to offer insight into something that he knows he has a blind spot around. So he makes the time to listen and acknowledge Kyle's idea, even if his delivery takes a little longer than he might want. He just waits. He knows it's going to be frustrating and he sucks it up. Now, Kyle knows that Paul's a director. So he works to get right to the point and even comes prepared with some suggested action items. Kyle could lean on Paul to help him present his idea in a way that the rest of the executive team, who mostly are directors, are actually going to hear it and appreciate it. They work together and the result is they keep the client. Now, I've got a couple last little problem and solution questions that I want to run through. Let's say you've got an annual company roadmap meeting. So these are one of those meetings where you go offsite and you plan your year ahead and you figure out, okay, what are we going to work on? What's this year going to look like? You set some goals, okay? It's a big task and everyone needs to work together. Now, your management team in this scenario is made up of 8 people. We have 4 directors, 0 relators, 1 thinker, and 3 socializers. I want you to think about what this team's composition creates, what gets done well, and where might the blind spots be. So you're welcome to make some notes again. I'm going to talk through this just to keep things moving along, but 4 directors and 3 socializers. This team is going to move quickly. Things are going to be done quickly. Lots of ideas are going to be talked about. Decisions are going to be made. The roadmap's probably going to be completed in less time than they might even have. They're going to get finished ahead of schedule, and they're probably going to start taking action on some of the stuff right then and there at the offsite. What might be overlooked? The details. The thinker, that one thinker, unless he or she is incredibly bold and incredibly confident, that thinker is probably going to be outshone and talked over a lot. And that thinker is going to feel frustrated and might even retreat a little and just sit there and make notes because he won't feel heard. There's no relators in the room. There's a good chance that people are going to be undervalued in the plan that gets created. Now, the socializers are people focused, but they're not as detailed, right? So there's going to be lots of people that are going to be frustrated by this plan or overlooked because the relators weren't there to really help balance that out. So I want you to consider your composition. Who's on your team, and are there imbalances? Here's another scenario. We have 1 director, 4 relators, 5 thinkers, and 1 socializer. What gets done well? Where might the blind spots be? Well, the director is going to be pretty frustrated through this meeting. This director is going to be tapping her toe on the ground and wishing that things would move a little quicker. They might not get the entire roadmap completed at the end of their session. It's going to be incredibly detailed, and it's going to consider every person. In fact, it might over consider the people element, and it might make decisions because they want to avoid conflict instead of making decisions because they need things to get done or action to be taken. The socializer is probably going to be pretty bored as well, but it's going to be thorough and it's going to be very high quality. Again, consider who's on your team. If these kinds of things happen when you guys have a team meeting or when you're making important decisions, work to bring others into the room. The reality is the best decisions are made with input from all. All of the strengths and all of the blind spots beautifully balance each other out. You just need to work together. Because each blind spot has its strengths, each style has its strengths and each style has its blind spots. And so we really just need to understand, what are our blind spots? What are our strengths? Once you're aware, you can collaborate so beautifully together as a team. And that's where a strong team is formed. So that's the end. I do have, it looks like 6 minutes or so for questions. I'm not sure how we want to do that, but I'm happy to give it a shot.
That's great, Tazzy. Thank you so much. What a fantastic presentation. And I see we've got questions coming in. So please do keep typing in your questions. We're going to get to as many as we can. So kicking things off, Tazzy, can someone be a strong 50-50 blend or kind of a mix of multiple styles?
Yeah, absolutely. So the assessment that you might have taken gives you one style, but the reality is people have different levels, right? They're spectrums. People have different levels of each style. And what I find is that often, let's say you are naturally a thinker. That's kind of where your natural style tends to take you towards. But let's say you grew up with a really strong director parent who you were obviously very close to, and your style actually might shift over time and you become a nice balance of director and thinker because of the way you grew up and the way you were influenced. So there's lots that can be changed and influenced. If you learn new skill sets, you can actually shift your style. The key thing here, though, is to understand kind of how to be authentically you. If you are a little more moderate on each spectrum, yeah, you can be a nice mix. And that might be a great strength in itself because you can appreciate the way each style communicates. And you probably don't find any one style overly frustrating. So yes, absolutely. Yes is the answer.
Great. And moving on, we're going to go to, sorry, I'm just grabbing a question here. So I'm a relator, and I feel like a lot of times I get ignored at work. So how can I best go about making sure that my opinions are being heard?
Yeah, I hear that a lot from relators, especially if they work closely with directors and socializers, mostly directors. I would say just having that awareness, have the directors, if that's who it is, on your team, learn about this and learn about where your superpowers are, because relators often are the ones that are overlooked. It's pretty common, especially if you are in organizations that tend to appeal to director socializer types. So yeah, knowing where your strengths are. And then the other thing is to really advocate, pick something, when you know that is where your strength is. This is a personal thing. This is about a person who's involved. I know that is a blind spot of the people on my team. I would push a little harder. The reality is, if the people on your team are directors, they're not likely to be offended by it. They'll probably kind of respect that you're speaking up. So if your inclination is to be quieter and not be pushy because you find it rude, I would take a bit of a risk there. And when you know you have an answer, you can still be polite about it, but speak up and make sure your voice is heard.
And do you find, Tazzy, that people change styles in different situations? For example, we've got a couple of people asking about under stress situations. Do you find that people change styles, or do their existing styles get more pronounced?
Yeah, I guess there's no real answer to that. I think it really depends on the individual. The more you learn and the more you're aware, like over the next couple months, really be aware of how you approach things and come back to this and review it now and then. And what I've really found is that people don't really tend to change styles that much. It might feel like we do before we really understand how the styles work. It might feel like, oh, I'm not as confident in this situation, so I'm more quiet and I sit back. But that doesn't mean your communication style is no longer director. It just means that you're in a scenario where you're feeling less confident. But when you're ready to communicate, your style will still be concise and clear and direct. So I think, sure, it's possible. I know that with some people, they feel like they're very different in their family or in a work environment. And I think, like anything, there are influences that shift how we do things, and that's more learned behavior than natural tendencies. So the reality is it's complex. You can definitely shift, but you will generally have a preference, and that's what I want you to focus on is where your preferences and your tendencies lie.
Great. And our last question for the day. So how can I now take this information and teach my team about communication style blind spots?
Yes, good question. Well, the reality is taking the assessment is the best first step. We have that guide where you can take the assessment and then learn about the different styles. And I mean, having everyone read it and discuss it. Maybe you book a half-hour meeting with your whole team. You ask them all to read it ahead of time. The thinkers and relators will read it thoroughly. The directors and the socializers might not. But that's okay. You come with a little summary and you ask everyone to maybe do that little activity that we did with the, how do you want to be communicated with, and see what your team comes up with. It can be really powerful just having the awareness. And if you can get them to have that awareness, that's the starting point. And then everyone starts to really adopt this different lens through which they see people's contributions.
Fantastic. And just for everyone's to note, I've put the link to the quiz in the chat box, and I've also put the link to the guide, the more detailed guide that's been put together to help you put these insights to use. That's in the chat box as well, and we'll also include all of those links in the email that we send out later today. So Tazzy, we are on time now, so just want to thank you again for a fantastic presentation and for powering through those tech issues. Did you have any final comments before we sign off?
No, everything was great. Really enjoyed that. So thank you so much for the opportunity.
Awesome. So I just want to remind everyone that we will send out that follow-up email later today that will have a link to the webinar recording, the slide deck, and we'll also include some links to these various resources that you can share with your team and your colleagues, your network. We've had folks asking about board of directors. All of this material will be publicly available, so please feel free to share with anyone you think would find it useful. The email that we send out will also include a survey link that you can fill out with your feedback on today's webinar. You'll also have an opportunity to indicate future topics you'd like to see covered in additional webinars as well. On behalf of Charity Village, thank you again for joining us today. We have a lot of webinars planned for you coming up this summer, including our next session on June 17th that will present a successful case study showing how you can adapt your traditional gala events to a virtual or hybrid format. So if you're planning fundraising events this year, you won't want to miss that one. So thank you again for taking part in today's webinar, and I wish you all a wonderful rest of your day. Bye-bye.